All right, we're now on for discussing the Chariot. So, how would we like to begin talking about the Chariot this evening? Denise, who usually starts the sessions, is on a call, work-related call, so she'll be joining us a little bit later. But
So then why don't we start? I was thinking start with the gallery, like do kind of flip it backwards.
flip it because by the time we get through that, then
She'll come on during the gallery, I'm sure.
right, because it'll take us a little bit of time to get through. There's 9 pages of gallery, so
Oh, wow.
yeah, and I didn't even put all the images I had on there. So let's see. Okay, let me share my screen here. Wait. Zoom. And I think I'd be more adept at this, but okay, here we go.
Manifestation.
Sharing our screen here. Okay. So here on the left side, what we have is a traditional depiction of the Chariot.
Yeah.
With the 2 Sphinx. These aren't winged Sphinx, but they're Sphinx, and the Chariot itself, the black and the white, which of course are reminiscent of the middle, the 2 pillars in the High Priestess card, and it's reminiscent of traveling the middle way, and so forth.
Good, evil.
Right, or actually, in reference to the specifically in reference to the major arcana, it's masculine, feminine, right?
Well, I mean, because Rachel Pollack, I swear the part I read, she talked about good and evil. No?
I mean, they have. I didn't.
2 Sphinxes on page 98, one white, one black, symbolized with a capital letter, good and evil. The one conquered, the other vanquished, both having become the servants of the Magus who has triumphed over his ordeals.
And this particular has the Magus wand. He's got the Magus wand here.
And what does Magus mean?
Or Magus or magician.
Magician?
Yeah, that's okay. Latin. That's the Latin.
And Magus. Then it also talks about, this must be that deck.
It's not, but
it talks about the square chariot, which plays on the 4 and then the 4 columns, which means manifestation in the physical world. Mm-hmm. It talks about 4 columns supporting a starry canopy, the 4 conquered elements. How are the 4 conquered elements represented there? Meaning you have mastered, you right. Now the magician. So we take the magician from the card number, whatever, what was it? 1?
Yeah.
The magician, and now this is where he is on the journey in his maturity.
Yeah. So the chariot has elements of in the Rider Waite symbolism. The chariot has symbols of the elements of the first 7 cards, so that essentially in that process of the first 7 or progression of the first 7, the chariot is the maturity. The chariot is now has mastery of all of the tools of the previous 7. So now it's a matter of what is the pilot of the chariot, i.e. the Magus or the magician. What is he going to do with it, right? Now that the magician has the mastery of those tools, and so it's very much a card about making intention, alighting upon a direction, those sorts of things. And the 4, and you can see obviously the elements from the different cards. You've got the crescent moon from the High Priestess. You've got the in the veil from the high priestess as well. The 4 points, the four of
Columns.
the columns, the balance, and the square are from the emperor. So you have the union of the emperor and the high priestess and the empress also. Let's see, how is she represented here? Maybe the veil is the empress. I'm not sure, but the idea is that the chariot, so the emperor and the empress essentially combine, the forces of the emperor and the empress combine as the lovers, right? And the lovers form that Orphic egg that we talked about last week. And so the chariot acts as the womb for the life that grows within that Orphic egg, right?
Okay.
So
the emperor and empress join as lovers?
as the lovers, or their energy joins or combines in the lovers card. That we, and then, and remember in the lovers card, we had that Orphic egg, the egg with the serpent.
Yeah, you just talked too fast for my hand to write. Okay, keep going. The Orphic egg, we're at the Orphic egg.
So, and then, so from there, here, one of the symbols of the chariot is that the chariot is the womb or the grail that carries that potential life of that resulted from the combination in the lovers.
Got it. Okay. Looks like we have almost an identical repeat on the next card.
Except it's not. There's some key differences here, and I actually read the artist notes on this one, and she made some very deliberate choices here. This is Robin Wood. She's very pagan, and yet also, kind of steeped in the traditional symbolism. She chose unicorns because unicorns are obviously magical and powerful, but they're also extremely difficult to control. And so the idea is if the charioteer loses control, right, that it could be really disastrous. And here we don't have a wand, and actually in the previous, it's interesting, in the previous card we don't have reins either. There are no reins in this card.
The reins are his wand.
It's the wand it's controlling.
Right. And what deck is that first one, please?
This is the Llewellyn Classic, which the purpose, it's a Barbara Moore. Barbara Moore's got like 10 or 15 different decks, but in this deck, her purpose was to basically do a version of the Rider-Waite-Smith that was more dynamic, that had more energy to it, more flow to it. And so this is not the card probably that Rachel Pollack's referring to in the book, but it's very, very, very close to it. And then here, the unicorns are being controlled by the harp.
I'm with you. I'm listening.
Okay. So the unicorns are being controlled by the harp here.
By the harp. Okay, so the harp is the reins?
Yes. And so in that regard, you have the it's almost as if the charioteer is Apollo. I mean, she doesn't say that in the artist notes, but you have the idea of Apollo is playing the lyre and so forth. And also you have the idea of Apollo's sun chariot. But interestingly, you've got the yin and yang, the balance, the idea of balance there.
And you're saying the gentleman may be Apollo?
Yeah, she doesn't identify him as Apollo, but the presence of the harp and him being in the golden chariot, it's somewhat suggestive. But but definitely the choices of unicorns over sphinxes was very deliberate on her part. Um, and I'll get to and we'll see this. Uh,
Well, and then Shadowscapes uses unicorns as well.
right, and that's why I put Shadowscapes next to this one for the comparison. We'll see as we really get into chariot symbolism, and I've included some chariot symbolism that predate tarot symbolism as well.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and the chariot, the idea that goes back at least 5,000 years, is that the chariot is the human consciousness, and the driver, right, is the soul, and the and the or rather the intelligence, right, and then the
Is it the soul or intelligence?
well, it depends on which, because
You confuse me sometimes.
so it depends on who's in the chariot. It depends on how many people you've got depicted in the chariot, because intelligence and mind are two different things, right?
Well, you just used 3 different words. First you used soul, then you used intelligence, then you used mind.
So
I'm a student and you've confused me.
so you can say, if there's one figure depicted in the chariot, you can say that the figure depicted in the chariot could be synonymous with soul or intelligence, both. But the idea is that the creatures pulling the chariot, those are the senses. Those are the senses. And the way that one controls the mind is by reining it in via the intelligence, right? That's the trick. In order to control the mind and not be a slave to the senses, one has to,
And you're saying the chariot represents the subconscious here?
represents human consciousness itself.
Oh, human consciousness. I'm not, I'm, okay. Thank you. I'm just going to shut up and let you talk, and I'm not going to take notes.
I'll show you a much better example at the end of this. There's a much better example at the end.
My mind does not want to follow what you're saying right now, so I'm going to let it go.
So, and then we get over here on Shadowscape, and you see the chariot crossing the water.
Yes.
Water, of course, is related to consciousness. Images of water, particularly in the tarot, as we saw beginning with the high priestess, right, is related to consciousness. And so you have the chariot going through the water. Here she doesn't have any, it's almost as if her will or her I guess she's communing. It's almost as if she's communing with the unicorns here. It's not as if she's, using any kind of implement to direct them, which is kind of interesting.
No, so can I read at least just one little excerpt here?
Yeah, because you have the book out.
So, triumph over obstacles, achieving victory, focusing intent and will, establishing an identity, self-confidence, maintaining discipline, assuming the reins of power and authority, and driving with the unwavering certainty in a cause. Control must be exercised in a constantly changing environment that can and will throw up challenges. In the landscape of a world that is constantly shifting with the people and emotions and circumstances all around. Like the tenuous border where sea meets sky, a constant tension of push and pull, of air against liquid is maintained. And to ride to victory, one must be able to achieve the confidence and knowledge to walk upon that fragile surface. That was what I was going to read.
That's really cool. So rather than showing black and white, like in these, this one is just depicting essentially a liminal space in between two versions of reality, basically. The water versus the land or sky, right? This is also, the water here is reminiscent of, one of the, something I was reading on the Chariot talked about how, whereas the Chariot is about focus of intent and so forth, that will is not in and of itself forceful. That will has to flow like a river. Will ebbs and flows like a river. It's not, it's not, it's not something that, it's not this, hyper masculine stereotype of you know rust or what have you. It's
Well,
not.
and we also notice in this card that this is a female,
Yes.
and it's the first time I think we've seen a female in the gallery. Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Okay.
Yeah. And I know in the Shining Tribe tarot, Rachel Pollack emphasizes that the chariot can be male or female. The chariot driver, charioteer, can be male or female. Um, and she makes the point too that a male or female can actually be depicted in any of the cards.
Right.
This is your favorite.
Oh, yeah, hang on. Charity, duality. Because we haven't been talking about duality a lot. Where are my cards? Oh, here we go. What are we on? Oh, the light seers?
Yeah.
Oh, God. So, and what I like about this one, because one of our questions for all of us is always, what do you like about this image or this card, and what do you dislike? I usually don't really have any dislikes, but I love how he's not inside the vehicle. He's like riding atop, almost as if it's a surfboard in a wave of, say, consciousness, because I see it as, I actually see waves on there that are, quote, invisible with sparklies, I like to call them. And so it's almost like he's inside that curve, that C curve of the wave, because that's what I see there.
Uh-huh.
And he's riding his surfboard, and to be able to have that balance to ride calmly and collected inside of a wave, I can't imagine the grounding, the focus, the innate, just that you have to just be completely centered, not only physically, but mentally. And honestly, this is the first time that we've seen a card in the gallery where the horses, well, A, these are horses for the first time, and B, there's nothing on them. Like
Right.
there's not even a collar. Like some of them just have a collar, but they have bridles. They have, some have reins, but at least they have a wand. Okay, he has no wand. He has no tool whatsoever. There are no bridles, no reins. There's nothing connecting them to the vehicle. Yet they're leading him, and he is controlling them. And if we look back in this same deck and we go back to the Magician, and we go back to, I think it's the Hierophant that was sitting at the bottom of the staircase.
Yes.
You see these people in this deck, or even this same person, if you will, like completely, they've learned how to manipulate and control their own energy, which is their power. And so that's what I see here.
Yeah, I definitely agree about the bubble of consciousness. And what I also like about it too, with regard to the horses, is that the horses are basically entirely independent. It's not. It's the human is focused, but the horses are also focused. So it's kind of like this.
But they are all. The horses are supporting the journey.
Right, absolutely. They're all a part of this bubble of consciousness that's going on. I also love, and in fact, yeah, the whole thing, they may all be skating on, looks like they're all skating on the water, And I love the purple water. It's like the sun that is kind of melting into the water. I love the purples in this.
It's a beautiful card.
My favorite part though is the fact that he has no shoes, because it makes me think that he's an escaped slave, and really that's what the Chariot's about. The Chariot,
Interesting. Very cool, Kurt.
the Chariot's about going. It's about traveling through. It's about going from understanding to severity on the tree of life, which basically means um, it means a path through karmic stuff, path through the tough karmic stuff, a success, potential successful path through
What did you say? Understanding to severity?
severity. Yeah,
Like severe situations?
severe situations. Yeah, and how to navigate that, how to navigate those severe situations. The Chariot embodies on the Chariot or with the charioteer are the tools with which we can navigate those severe situations that we have gained through the previous cards,
Okay.
right? Um, I do really like this card, and of course I love it. Can you read, CJ, the affirmation from the book? Do you have the book for this?
Can I get up and go to the other room to get it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the Chariot. I choose, let me get in front of the camera. So there's an affirmation with every one of the cards in this deck. I am in love with this deck, and here is the Chariot. Kurt, I didn't know you stole it from this.
Yeah, I attributed it to that.
I just read it and I just took it in. I choose who I am becoming, and I run toward it with conviction and consistent motion. And so it is.
And you can see that in this card. That's exactly what you see, what you described when we were looking at this card. So that's pretty fantastic. Yeah, I got an Amazon gift card as a late birthday present from someone, so I may be getting
Light seers?
Yeah.
Because it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, and what got me are the affirmations. I do like that. I mean, I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. So you'll like this card because it's Aries.
It's my least favorite card of all the ones we've looked at, but okay.
But it's the god Aries going across the desert to try to get to his lover, despite all of the gods trying to keep them apart.
Interesting. Okay, I'm in love with this card now.
Because so Aries, who is not liked by anybody because he's kind of brash, he's not cultured.
Really? I would have never guessed.
He's not cultured. He's Zeus doesn't like him. Athena doesn't like him. Zeus isn't his father because Hera gave birth to him without a father. She just kind of manifested him, and Zeus is like, whatever, and anyway, so everybody dislikes him except for Aphrodite. She thinks he's kind of hot, and she falls in love with him. The problem is Aphrodite is married to Hephaestus, whom she is not attracted to, but she's married to him. Well, they have an affair. Hephaestus finds out about it. He decides he's going to humiliate them, so he creates this like special net that he casts over them while they're making love, and then he makes he brings all the other gods together to witness it, to try to embarrass them. They don't care. Aphrodite and Hephaestus and Ares don't care. But anyway, there's this whole thing, and they're separated. Well, Ares then mounts his chariot and goes across the desert to get to Aphrodite because he wants to be with his love. And so that's what this card is about. is about, again, the crossing of the obstacles, etc., to get to.
And what deck is that?
This is the Mythic. This is not the story I would have thought they would have chosen for this card, but it's a cool story.
And you said he's crossing his obstacles?
He's crossing the desert to get, yeah, you know, crossing the desert. And anytime you see, so this is Jungian, which, you know, tarot predates Jung, but anytime you see a desert, it's generally a unless it's an Egyptian, you know, unless it's Egyptian themed or a country, a desert country. But if it's a European or American deck or artist or something, if you see a desert, you're talking about something that's desolate, something that where there's no creativity, no life, etc., etc. In versus a jungle or a forest, which is verdant and full of life and creativity. For example, like at the beginning of Star Wars, you know, it starts out on Tatooine, which is complete desert, you know, and then, you know, at the end of the first movie, they show up on that where they get their medal awards, they get their medals at the end, their talismans at the end, all except Chewbacca because they're racist. Right? They don't give the Wookiee the medal, even though he risks his life like everybody else. Anyway, so anyway, that at the end of that first movie, that world is all green and verdant, right? So the idea is that they have crossed into this realm of creativity and possibility by the end of that first movie, right? So anyway, anytime you see a desert, right, and something that is a Jungian influence, which certainly any tarot artist, like in the 20th century, is going to be, you know, 20th and 21st century. Desert typically, unless you're talking about Egypt or something like that, is going to be desolation. So the next chariot we also see a female charioteer. And what's interesting, this is from the Druid craft. And what's interesting here, they didn't in the deck identify who the charioteer is. Sometimes they do, but they didn't here. They did say that the chariot in this particular deck, and I didn't see this anywhere else necessarily, but it's the mastery of sexual energy. So you know. So I figured, you know, Aries going out and trying to find his getting to be with his love, and then master sexual energy. You know, hey, that's cool. That works together.
But is this the only card that you read that from the book that goes with that deck?
I read that from the book that goes with the deck. But I mean, you can see other, you know, typical chariot imagery here. You know, she's confident. She's got the black and white horses and so on.
But see, what we didn't talk about in the middle card where Aries is, both horses are trying to go in different directions. And so that puts us at like a standstill, like where you can't go anywhere. There's another card that Rachel Pollack talks about where the wheels are both going in different directions. Then there's a card she talked about where the charioteer is sitting on the ground. And if you're sitting, you can't have consistent movement forward. So some of the chariot cards I would have to interject, including the middle one on this slide, may speak of not like something has happened and you're unable to conquer some obstacle. There's something standing in your way. You are confused, you're indecisive, you don't know what to do next. You don't know what your next step is. That's maybe how I would read that.
And that's, as far as divinatory readings, that's typically the chariot. If the chariot comes up reversed, or if the chariot is ill-defined by the cards around it, that's generally how it's read.
But would you not read a card in the upright position differently if the horses or the wheels are pulling in different directions, or the guy is sitting on the ground, than if, let's say, we have the light seers or the the Druid craft.
Well, yeah, I would probably read this one differently than this, but again, depending on what's around it.
I forget about what's around it. I get that. I guess you're not I'm not being clear in my communication.
I understand what you
like
mean.
If the artist is making them go in different directions, or making something where like it would be physically impossible to have it moving forward, my question is, even in the upright position, wouldn't you read that card from that deck differently than the same card from a different deck?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm just asking. I'm trying to learn.
Potentially.
Okay.
It would depend on the reading. It would depend on the reading. It would depend on it would depend on the circumstance.
The circumstances, the reading, the cards around it, the situation.
Got it. Hi guys. Hi. Finally. Oh man, it's been a couple of days. Anyway, I think that's the same question you kind of posed last time, CJ, which is, no, it's a great question though, because, and I think this is where the burden on the tarot reader comes in, right? Because you understanding the fullness of what the card could mean, and then having to interpret sort of the artwork in relationship to the other cards. So yeah, if I get, if I see some artwork and I look at those two horses, for example, because I see horses across the screen right now, and they seem to be going in the same direction, like the Light Seers tarot, right? Where they don't seem to necessarily be pulling off in two different directions. Maybe that is about that forward momentum, right? But it still takes, if you think about it from the charioteer's perspective, it still takes effort to make those, to make those horses move forward, right? Together. So there's still that kind of, I think, grit element is what I was, right? That's going to require that. But what does it mean, right? What does it mean when they're pulling off in these two different directions?
Or one of them, the wheels go in different directions, or one of them, the charioteer is sitting on the ground with a lack of all movement.
I mean, is that really about, the kind of tenacity you have in light of the obstacles that are always going to present themselves, right? Regardless of
amen to that
circumstance. It doesn't matter how skilled you are, how, sort of positively, you're having a sort of positive mental frame, right?
Right.
In this particular card, we know, from the description that this is Aries, right? And we see how confident he is. He doesn't care, right? He's going to, go in the direction he's going regardless. He's going to rein in the horses. And
because he has a purpose.
Exactly. And so I think that, yeah, despite the fact that your horses are going to want to go in either direction, if, if you have that purpose and so forth, that would be the message of this particular card.
This card represents what's been happening for the last several days at work, right? There's kind of if you look at the president as the sort of the charioteer, the president has made, or executive leadership has made a decision, and faculty and students are the horses running in two different directions, right? You laughed, it resonates, right? Because that's kind of where we're at. And so, to get us, it's so funny because I was thinking about it. I'm like, wow, how appropriate that we're talking about the chariot this week, because we're having potentially chariot-like energy around what's happening. So yeah, that's so interesting. I love it. And then of course, you guys probably already talked about this. I'm so sorry that I'm so late. But have you gone over the Sphinxes yet? You probably did.
A little bit, but not in great detail. No.
What did you ask, if we've been over the Sphinxes?
Yeah, you guys had a chance to talk about Sphinx. I'm getting my coffee, CJ.
Well, we can go back to the Sphinxes.
I'm on cup 2 of coffee. I can't see, I'm not supposed to be able to see myself, am I, Kurt?
No, you can. I see. Yeah, you can. I think Giselle
Oh,
left.
there. Yeah, I think they got tired of waiting or something. Maybe the one time I get somebody on here, Kurt, and it's like, they think we're full of horse manure or something.
I think they
See
didn't like.
how suggestive I am? We have horses in front of us.
I think they didn't like that a man was talking so much, but that's okay.
That
Oh, were
was
there others?
a woman. That was a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Were there others on here earlier?
Yes, my friend Griselle showed up with her, we'll just call him her friend, which is
Hey,
also a mutual friend of ours, Dwayne. They showed up, but then we were just kind of, I hadn't pulled all my cards and we were just kind of hanging out, and so they left.
So
oh,
I brought it back to the Sphinxes, so you could, if you wanted to talk about the Sphinxes, but there's Sphinxes here, and I think there's some Sphinxes in some of the other cards as well.
Well, I guess that idea of them, when the Sphinxes at some point, and this is where I'm not remembering completely, but the Sphinxes were sort of an original artwork, or was it horses that were original?
I want to say, that's a good question because I remember reading both were original, so I can't answer that.
And I did not read the Pollock book this week.
I don't remember. I mean, I remember reading 78 Degrees because I
Well,
got
so they talk about in some of these older decks, the Sphinxes. I would say Sphinxes, but that's just my gut. And here, so just so y'all can see, I don't know, Kurt, if you can flip it for how easy it is to flip for a minute for those other people that'll watch later, but here's Sphinxes on this one. And Kurt, this is the deck you gave me. What is it?
Heaven and Earth. Yeah, Heaven and Earth.
Heaven and Earth Tarot.
And there's some Sphinxes on some other cards, some cards also later in the gallery as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And the armor is significant too, which we can talk about as we move through.
Oh, and then on my Art Nouveau Tarot, the one that I originally learned on 20 years ago, are those Sphinxes there?
I can't see, but the people will be able to see. Oh, wait, I've got this. Hold on. Nobody.
Is that a Sphinx? Two Sphinxes? I can't tell. They're bird things.
Okay, so that would be, those would be griffins probably.
Yeah, those, yeah.
Those are griffins?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's flip back here. Okay. So this is just pretty. This chariot is just pretty. Has,
gorgeous. Is that the good? That's the good.
That's the good tarot. Again, we have a woman, we have a female figure as the charioteer. We've got the light and the dark horses. Light, a suggestion of going in two different directions. But it's subtle. It's not super intense.
With the way their heads are turned, is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would say they're just that's almost an even more peaceful one, almost like they're sitting in this knowing that the accomplishment's already there and they are accomplished.
Yeah.
Maybe sort of out, yeah, they've already reached it, right? They've already kind of.
Do you feel a sense of peace there?
Yeah.
Like there is no more rush to get over there. I don't know. I'm really liking that card.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I also kind of respond to it this way, is that the horses are sort of like, okay, we know what direction we're going in now, and we're not resistant to it anymore. So they're all in alignment, even though they're not facing the same direction, there is this kind of maybe they're being complicit to some degree to the will of the driver, even though they're facing different directions. Maybe that's because of the calmness.
And then we have the reason that she's, where did my, okay, here's my first. Okay, so the reason that they depicted her as the Chariot is because she was both a goddess of this of fire and of water, a goddess of love and of war, and so her duality is what is why they depicted her for balance. However, she also is famous. She's known for essentially abandoning all of her gifts, all the tools that she earned throughout her journey in goddesshood. She basically gives up one gift after another until she's completely naked to journey to the center of the underworld to rescue her husband. I believe his name was Tammuz or something like that. I'm mispronouncing it, but anyway, she takes this journey, this very, very deliberate journey to rescue her husband in the underworld, and so she is a charioteer in that way. You know, she carries her gifts with her that she essentially sacrifices to gain deeper and deeper access to the underworld. So
And what's the name of this deck?
this is the Dark Goddess. This is the Dark Goddess deck.
And I'm reading here that Ishtar is also associated with Inanna.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
And so these two very strong principles of love and war, these sort of extremities. I love that.
And we have, and she's got her quiver of arrows here, quiver of arrows and bow here, which we'll see again. And also the star here, which is significant in a lot of chariot images, which we'll see. But in the bow and the arrows as an emblem of directed will. So here's Charlotte's chariot for the Shining Tribe, and she emphasizes that the chariot. Well, we definitely have the water here, emblematic of consciousness, and we have the base of the chariot of the mast, but a mast that has been broken, mast that has had like holes poked in it. In other words, so that you can see through the shamanistic mask into a new reality, into a hidden or into a new reality. And so it's this idea of journeying, so on. It's also an idea of victory, that the chariot, and she talks about in that deck, she talks about the chariot originally being associated with Greco-Roman, charioteering, and the idea of actually, being victors in a race. So this is the whole victory banner, of course, and then a wheel, a medicine wheel at the center of the victory banner. And then the glowing chariot wheels are, she brings in the idea of Ezekiel, the heavenly chariot of Ezekiel, and she talks about that pre-Kabbalistic Judaic mysticism was all about essentially connecting with the chariot of Ezekiel and traveling through the various depths of reality, via this chariot of Ezekiel. Kabar, I think is what she called it, but it was so prior to the focus on the tree of life, which came in like 13th century Spain. Prior to that, the focus of Jewish mysticism was on this chariot of Ezekiel. So which, you know, if you're into ancient astronaut theory and so forth, you know, that everybody talks about it being reminiscent or referencing, you know, some kind of flying saucer, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have different chariot images here. These are ones I just collected. I don't really know a whole lot about the images, but I thought they were cool.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And let's look at the, oh, and the middle one, look at that. Oh, wow. These are beautiful.
What kinds of birds are those?
I was trying to figure that out. Like at first, initially, when I saw the card, I thought my first thought was crow, but it's not a crow. Definitely not a crow. And they're.
But this idea that, I mean, I almost see that sort of how easy it would be to lose control.
Oh yeah.
This chariot, right? When I was reading, God, this was late last year sometime, and I was doing a reading, and this was a personal reading for myself, and I drew the Chariot card, and I consulted 78 degrees, right? So I went in there and I consulted 78 degrees, and I think one of the profound lessons that Pollock sort of talks about is the degree to which the Chariot energy really allows you to kind of, you know, provide a solution to a problem, or to not so much a solution to a problem, not that so much as a way to sort of control the problem, right? That sometimes leads you to think that you actually have resolved what gave rise to the problem to begin with. And so part of the wisdom of the Chariot is that even though you have these skills to be able to, I want to say, like, put things in their containers, compartmentalize things, right? Store it away, really kind of control it in that way. But ultimately what you've done there in some cases is that you haven't really dealt with the problem at all. You just controlled sort of a set of circumstances or the elements that presented themselves as an issue. So that lesson was really profound for me because it really did stick with me. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah. And I was trying to think of the times in which, you know, you sort of like just got something off your desk because you could just sort of manage it. But lo and behold, that thing shows up again, you know, next week or a couple of weeks later, right? So you didn't really successfully manage it either. So that was the other aspect of the Chariot to keep in mind. I don't know what it is about this imagery or this artwork here in the center that sort of reminds me of that, right?
Yeah, I know the Hebrew letter that's associated with the Chariot is Chet, which is sometimes some tarot sources will translate it as container, some will translate it as fence, but it's that idea of kind of fencing in, protecting, or controlling this energy, you know, or specifically, I mentioned this a little bit ago, that it's the life that's created from the union in the lover's card.
Okay.
And it's that, you know, fencing in or protecting or containing that life energy.
Yeah.
It's also interesting with this one that the perspective is that it's definitely, you know, that it's mid-journey because you can see like they're in there and got other chariots behind them and so on.
No, you're not there. You haven't arrived. And really to kind of claim that victory too early, you know, prematurely, that the Chariot suggests, right? Or even maybe potentially promises. I guess don't count your victories before they're they're really victorious.
And then I found this interesting because um, I'm not 100% familiar with the animals divine, but my understanding was it was mostly animals, and yet we have Freya,
Mhm.
depicted here. So that, and riding a boar, which I don't, or maybe is it a boar or a bear? I can't really. It's a bear.
No,
No,
it's
it's a
because it
boar.
looks just like a javelina.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
okay. So I have no idea what this card, what the significance of this particular version of the Chariot is. I just put it here because I like the motion in the card, and I mean I like Freya. But and typically you see her actually depicted riding on a chariot pulled by cats. So why they chose this and not a chariot pulled by cats, I don't know.
Hmm.
But that's interesting. Looks like she's amid some shooting stars. Yeah,
And what is that other creature back there? Like a lynx?
I I don't know.
Right there is that sort of,
Oh, yeah, it is. It is.
it's a lynx, isn't it?
Yeah, yep. Which there's your cat, Kurt.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. But her chariot's pulled by cats. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
I know Norse pagans who swear up and down that their cats, when they, leave their bodies, they go to be with Freya.
Hmm.
You know, it's like, so. Oh,
Love it.
so this is King Arthur's boat,
Hmm.
and apparently early on in King Arthur's story, one of the very early tellings of King Arthur's stories, probably a couple hundred years before Mallory, which is what most people are familiar with. There was a story about King Arthur and Taliesin and a bunch of sailors and so on and so forth going to the underworld. Which to me, this is probably like a rewrite or a recasting of, sounds like, like of a tale from the Odyssey. But anyway, there is a King Arthur myth that's anglicized for that. But anyway, this is the Praedwin is King Arthur's boat, right? So this is the boat that's literally taking them to the underworld, and it is a journey of peril because only I think 7 of them make it back alive. So it's the idea that if you're on a journey, if you're on a quest, there could be peril involved and so forth. Um, and here is our Wildwood tarot, and here they just dispense with the Chariot imagery altogether, which makes a lot of sense because they're in the forest, and you wouldn't have a chariot in the forest.
What are the animals behind him that look dog-like?
They're probably dogs. I mean, they look like what are those called? They're British Afghan no
Yeah, I
Afghan.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're dogs definitely. Um,
But they're behind him and they're looking peaked, not like the confidence of the horses and things we've seen in the other cards.
right. Well, they definitely know to stay out of the way of his arrows. Um, and the description in the deck the um, talks about how in Celtic mysticism and in Native American mysticism, how the arrow, like in Celtic mysticism, they would actually write incantations on the arrows themselves, and then shooting the arrow was an act of will that would infuse the arrow with magic, and and the stringing of the bow, and the pulling of the bow, the setting of the bow was all an act of readying one's will and one's power and so forth. And it talks about in the description in the deck how this this requires a lot of patience and a lot of peace and a lot of steadiness, etc., etc. And um, to really master one's will, one can't be brash or forceful anything of that nature, that it's actually a very deliberate and guided and intensive process, right?
And talk about the Native American side of that mysticism, please.
Yeah, well, the Native American, they just emphasize that the arrow was sacred, like that the you know that the shooting of the arrow was considered a sacred act. Um, and of course, in this deck, the element of air is the arrows in this particular deck as well. And we've already seen in a couple of the cards that didn't even use this exact symbolism. We saw the charioteer depicted with a bow and arrow.
Yes, so element of air, I'm just writing this. Yes, and so then we'll talk later in the Phantasmagoria deck. Remember, we were going to bring that up on this one?
Oh, yeah.
Which I can post on some of these that we talk about in here. I'll go back to the group and post them.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But he had the arrows, and then I'm trying to see if anybody else I have in here. Doesn't look like any of my other decks that I've pulled have arrows. That's the only one is the Phantasmagoria. And so what I'll do is I'll go make sure I post this week.
And this is the as above. So in this deck, obviously the person here has overcome her obstacle and has transformed. She has completely transformed into a new reality.
And you still see those, the elements of light and dark here.
Yeah.
The two sort of tensions. Oh no.
So just because you're there doesn't mean you don't need that consistent whatever still, because it's still, you're still having to maintain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and then it's tension between two ideas, right? That sort of gives rise to new things. That's really kind of necessary in order to be able to bring about sort of a creative possibilities.
Well, and the tarot, and I think Pollock talks about this, and a number of tarot folks talk about it. I don't know if it originated with Pollock or not, but I know she's talks about it. But the 3 groups of 7 in the tarot, and the Chariot is the end of the first group of 7.
Yeah.
If we look at this, like for example, like the hero's journey, like, or I mean, talking about the fool's journey, but the hero's journey, fool's journey, etc. This could be seen as the ending of the first arc, the accomplishment of the first arc of that. And in Joseph Campbell sort of lingo and terminology, you know, the hero who completes a journey, or or part of a journey, or what have you, then a mark of that is the hero becomes the master of 2 worlds, right? And so this particular emblem of the charioteer, or the chariot, as transformation, she is master of 2 worlds. She's master of the dark and the light. She has, you know, she has the wings that allow her to navigate both of those, right? So the charioteer can sit between the dark horse and the black and the white horse, or the, you know, or the dark sphinx and the white sphinx, or whatever, and navigate in either direction.
Right. And I did write that down in my notes when I was doing my independent study, was that this is the achievement and triumph, this card, over the first level. But I didn't understand that there were 3 levels. So
yeah, that, and I believe that's a Rachel Pollack. I mean, that's something that she emphasizes quite a bit. Um, um,
Hmm.
Hunter is always so in the 80s, the TV show Robin Sherwood, which is the first version of Robin Hood really to bring the pagan elements to bear in Robin Hood, in like a popular version. Robin was understood to be the son, the mystical son of Herne the Hunter. And there was a high priest that would put on the Herne the Hunter garb and, invoke Herne the Hunter. And, he would give Robin like mystical instructions when he was in trance. But so I like Herne the Hunter. And, but it's interesting, this imagery here. We have Herne peering between the trees, right? And then we have the ripping of the veil.
Mm-hmm.
This card from the Osho deck, and it gets back to this idea of that Rachel Pollack speaks of in her interpretation of her Chariot card. It's talking about the Chariot being a card of revelation, a card of ripping open, ripping past the old reality and into seeing something new. And I really like this deck, and we talked about too that some people view, particularly in the Druidcraft tarot. This is really the only place I saw it, but in Druidcraft tarot, they talk about the Chariot as indication of sexual prowess, and we kind of make that argument here with this awareness card. The idea, the depiction, the description, right, from the deck talks about ripping the veil and being able to see the face of Buddha. Then, for those of us raised in a Judeo-Christian context, the idea of the veil ripping at the death of Christ, the symbol of the temple veil ripping at the death of Christ, meaning, the essence revealed, but also this, you can't really get away of the vulvic image here.
Yeah.
So and of course the face of the Buddha being the clitoris.
Well, and hell, when you start telling me all that, I even see sperm swimming in there.
Okay, yeah.
And they're blue. They're baby blue sperms.
Yeah. So this, right. So, and it's despite the shadowy fear image here that's cast against the veil, so the Osho deck is so good to read with, because you can pull so much off of the imagery of the card. But mine is like falling apart. It's so old.
Mine is too, but they have it for what, $24 on Amazon right now.
It's gone up. I mean, before Christmas, it was like 19. It's going up. This one is that we don't see a chariot depicted here. This is just a beautiful card. We see the Sphinx here.
Yeah.
And apparently the description on these cards is so incredibly long. I didn't have the time to read the whole thing. Apparently the creator of the deck the inspiration for this card was that the creator of the deck was in Egypt, in between the paws of the Sphinx, and she looked up in the sky, and it was the experience of being. And this is, of course, these are two constellations in the sky that are there. I mean, which could be taken for like wheels of the chariot. I just think it's beautiful. Um, here's-
Oh my God, Kurt, look at the Tabula Mundi one and what I was talking about earlier.
So I thought you had seen, when you were saying all that, I thought you had seen the Tabula
I've
Mundi.
never seen the card before. That's amazing. That blows my mind.
So here's the Rosetta, and I love the Cancer crab armor.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the cosmic grail, container for the energy, like you were talking about, Denise, the container, the various elements. So the chariot is supposed to have elements from all of the previous cards in the group of 7 or 8. So yeah, and we see that rushing, and the chariot acts as the vents to rushing energy of that water that's behind it. And then here we see in Tabula Mundi, he's just surfing. He's just surfing up, and so these are not horses, actually. According to the deck, these are hippocampus. These are half horses, half fish. I mean, basically mer horses, right?
Oh, cool.
And the idea is that sometimes if we can't see a full picture, we'll make a judgment on what something is without being able to see it clearly. So
we do that all the time, Kurt.
Right. And we've got, he's got his grail. He's got his grail on his surfboard. He's just, I love the energy, like all the energy in this card, and all the blue, like just all the blue of the water. Like this is a beautiful card.
And Denise, will you speak to that cosmic grail just very briefly again?
Which one was that?
Were you the one who was talking about the cosmic grail?
Well, I had talked about it before, but Denise had talked about the chariot as being like a like the people putting their issues or different, or compartmentalizing things into different containers.
Yeah. So you've controlled the situation, but you haven't solved the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that tied into the cosmic grail at all, Kurt, or no?
Well, it could be. I mean, the idea is that, the lovers created this being, this magical child, and the chariot becomes the container, or
Okay, I guess I'm not understanding. Can you explain the cosmic grail to me? I'm really trying to learn how to communicate here.
No, you're so,
no, I'm not. I need to be better at what I do. Can you explain the cosmic grail to me, please?
So the idea of, well, anytime, okay, we're gonna back up. We're gonna back way up here. So anytime you see reference to any kind of grail or cup or anything in Western iconography, what you're really talking about is a vagina. Okay, more often than not. That's why you have, Dan Brown and other folks, and saying that the the true Holy Grail is the bloodline of Jesus, for example, right? So in that respect, and so the Hebrew letter associated with the chariot is Chet, which can be translated to container. It can be translated to fence. It can also be translated to cella, which I'll talk about in a minute. Cella makes more sense with the waves than anything else, but I'll get to that in a minute because I don't want to confuse you. So the point is that so in the Lover's card, we saw the Orphic egg being conceived, right? We saw that. So in this card, essentially, the egg is in the idea is that the egg is inside the cup, right? The egg is inside the grail. So the chariot is transporting that life force, is the container for that life force.
And we're assuming it's inside the grail because the grail is a womb space now because it started as a vagina?
Yes, correct. Anytime you see like cups or grails or like the chalice on the altar, for example, like in
I'm looking at my chalice right now.
Yeah, that's a vagina, right? That's a vagina. Like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Like when you go to church and drink out of the, when you drink the blood of Christ, that's a vagina.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Receptive energy, yes?
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Well, and it's, I guess the ritual or the rite when
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, speak to the last one over there, the so below.
Yeah, so this is just fun. This is like everybody's getting in the car and going on an adventure. And,
And they seem to be okay with wherever it is that they're going, right? I don't see that as sort of bickering or.
No,
they're all like, where we're going.
And that's where the magic is. That's the magic, right? Because who gets their whole family in a car and it's like, all right, I was watching this documentary on National Lampoon, and they talked about, so the Vacation movie was based on a short story by John Hughes, and John Hughes wrote about this vacation that his family went on in 1958. It was absolutely horrible. That was, and it ultimately became the Vacation movie, and everybody, all the writers they interviewed said, every vacation that I went on as a kid was exactly like that. So bad. But this is not, this, everybody's like, hey, cool, where are we going? And, so yeah, that's the magical aspect, right? When everything's in alignment and so on, everybody can actually have fun.
This concept of flow, that when we are sort of deeply involved in what it is that we're doing, that we enter a meditative state that is often referred to as flow in psychological literature. And I think that's interesting because I think that's what you potentially can arrive at with the chariot, right? That's one aspect. Once everything is sort of in alignment and a sort of direction is determined and you're moving in that direction, and all of the elements are moving in that direction, you're ultimately going to have this state of flow. And I guess maybe that is a kind of cosmic union, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of the Tao, like the Tao is this sort of inconceivable force that you can't identify until you've actually experienced it.
Yeah.
At least in terms of Taoist literature, that which claims to be the Tao is not the Tao, that kind of thing. I'm not a Taoist expert, but in fact, given the parameters of Taoist magic, I cannot do it. I'm not equipped for it. But anyway, and also I was going to go somewhere with this. Yeah, and the idea of gnosis also, which is central to Tsuro, that
the idea of what, sweetheart?
Gnosis.
Gnosis. Is that what the word you're saying? I just can't. Sometimes I can't hear well off of there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The idea, the right idea that the true understanding or knowledge comes from experience. that, you know, when, of course, like, church authorities and so forth don't like that because, you know, it kind of devalues. But so this here with this wave, you know, you could see that as a state of, certainly see that as a state of flow or a state of gnosis, you know. And also with the light seers tarot, you know, they're definitely in the quote unquote zone at that, or flow at that point, you know. And even despite the fact in this one that the forces are definitely turning their heads in different directions, still pretty focused on where he's going, you know, despite that.
Yeah.
So you know, in reference to the Hebrew attributions here, I thought it was kind of the definitions I read in the Tarot sources were though be it brief, I thought they were too simplistic. So I looked in a Hebrew source, and the attribution is actually to the practice of chala, and it's not and I'm not Jewish, so I'm not familiar with the total nuances of all the practices, but apparently it's when you're gonna eat, or when you're gonna make a sacred offering, you take a piece of bread and you tear it off, you twist it off, and you keep it aside, and essentially it decomposes. This piece that you've set aside is for chala has decomposes, and you
Chella, Chella.
Challa.
Okay, so you're breaking on my end. I'm having a hard time hearing you, and like half of what you're saying is getting chopped off. Can you repeat what you're saying, the word you're saying again?
It's chala.
Can you spell that?
I believe it's Challah, I believe.
Yeah.
And what is that?
So it's a practice of where you twist off a piece of bread. If you're gonna
The practice is called chala.
yeah.
Okay, that's all I needed. We're good. Thank you.
Reference here.
And
Okay.
that's also a reference to the bread itself, isn't it?
Yeah, of the or challah. Yeah, it's actually pronounced challah. They pronounce it challah. It's spelled challah, but if it's a bread itself, it's challah. But the so you would tear off a piece of the bread or twist off a piece of the bread, and it would decompose and everything, and you basically keep it until it decomposed completely. And the idea the idea of the practice, or the meditation behind the practice, is that everything is temporary, that everything and so
Interesting.
in this flow,
Yeah.
you know, this energetic flow you see is temporary. It's movement, you know, it's movement, it's
Yeah, because once that wave finally there hits its peak, and what's the word I'm looking for? Boy, it's been a long day. But that, you know, it's hit its peak, and it's going to what's this? It's going to diminish. It's going to level out. It's going to, you know, you won't be able to ride the wave once it's finally done that. It's lost its kind of it's lost its movement. And
the idea is to take advantage of the momentum of the chariot.
Yeah. But, you know, in order to even catch that wave, though, it is about a skill, right? You have to be skillful to be able to harness it. And so here's the timing, and here's the perfect place I can actually get up on my board, and I can balance as I ride that wave in. You can tell that I am, you know, a surfboarder kind of person. But anyway, I'm not. But it's so cool the way that they're able to do that in that balance. You know, we're not, you know, ballerinas, I think, who make dancing on their point look easy, right? They make it look, they're graceful, and that's a studied skill. That's a strength and stamina that and commitment and a complete and total it's discipline that over time creates the skill set where you can read the circumstances and the situation and be able to step in at just the right time to be able to ride that energy out until the end. And I don't wonder if that's the victory to some degree, right? The victory is about learning the skills and knowing when and having that sense develop. And then the riding out of the wave is just that sort of natural, if you will, but it's that sort of result that happens because you were able to, or the person was able to, has the skill to be able to discern that and make that happen prior. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's
It makes complete sense, Denise.
I'm sorry, it's just been a long day.
And I'm trying to pair what
makes
she's
sense.
saying, Kurt, with everything I said earlier on light seers and put all that together.
Mhm. And what you said about the skill, you know, that's what's depicted
Yes.
in this card.
The
Yeah.
precision, right? Because it's not, you know, when you are pulling back, that's, you know, that takes a lot of strength to be able to pull the bow back, right? And then to aim it and then release it.
Yeah, that's how we know that rainbow, incidentally, is how we know that Yahweh has the biggest dick, which is ironic considering that considering the gay community has chosen that as its symbol when it's all about heterosexual tribal god masculinity. But
celebration of the masculine aspect there, you know.
So yeah, definitely. And so what I was thinking as you were saying that, Denise, is that if we got this, if somebody had this card and it was either reversed, if you read reversed, or if it's defined, what it could represent is the desire, the just overwhelming desire to take that leap or to go in that new direction, but maybe the skills haven't been developed properly, or it's not the right time, you know. So it may be the right path, but not the right time.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's that definitely, you know, fall down, what is it, fall down 7, get up 8 kind of idea where you haven't developed that sort of nuance to be able to say, aha, right now, here's when I go, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rushing, a kind of like, almost like this sort of like neophyte enthusiasm, right? When you're just young and you're learning this thing and you have all of this enthusiasm. I think about the newly converted, right? Regardless of what you've been converted to, and all of this sort of enthusiasm to just kind of learn it all and know it all. And then you go, and I think about this too, and I'm not picking on Christians. It's just that I think it's one of the things that I've seen often, where you have somebody who is newly converted and say newly baptized, and then they go out and what they do is they're sharing the gospel and they just kind of like blurt it out at you, like you're on the receiving end of a fire hose of their enthusiasm, right? And it's the same kind of thing, because if the goal here is to witness and to share your story and hopefully to bring folks into the fold, if you don't have that nuance and you don't know how to manage the story, it's going to have, I think, the opposite effect, right? Rather than drawing towards, it's pushing away.
I make it very clear to my students that they can write conversion narratives, but they cannot write conversion tracts.
Yes, that's a beautiful distinction. That's a beautiful distinction.
You can tell that I grew up in Texas because I can make that distinction.
Because there is a difference, right? It's that beautiful sort of difference. And it's not such a subtle difference. It's a pretty that's awesome. I love it. I love how we've taken, which deck is the middle card from?
That's the Tabula Mundi.
The Tabula Mundi, and how being able to kind of just pull that all out. I love that because the skill, I don't know, maybe it's sort of a modern interpretation. Maybe it's because it's sort of like I'm sitting here and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, to
the
get
whole
me to get me on a surfboard to be able to do that, you know, what it would take to do that.
the whole
So
purpose
now
of
Denise,
this.
take that one and contrast it or compare it with the light seers in your light seers, because I had that entire conversation before you got here on this card.
Yes.
What's cool about that, CJ, is if you take the colors from this one and you put it next to the colors on the Tabula Mundi, they're complementary.
They complement each other. Yes, they're
Yeah.
across from the color wheel from each other.
Yeah, yeah. I'm surprised I even knew that. See, that's
So
just
I would love to see a new slide. Are you saving these presentations, Kurt?
I have the presentation saved, and they're PDFs on our there are PDFs
On the group.
on our group.
So I would love to see one more card at the end of this with the light seers and the Tabula Mundi together.
I can just make that for you and send it to you too. Like,
Or just post it in the group for us all to enjoy.
Yeah, I could do that. When I
And you
have,
don't even have to say anything.
I have to write my yearly review that determines whether I get rehired or not. That's due Monday.
You'll do fine.
Other things. So I couldn't talk about the chariot without talking about the ultimate chariot imagery of 5,000 years, which is the chariot conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, which takes place at the Battle of Kurukshetra just prior to the battle. And it's this battle that will determine the fate, essentially, of the entire world at that time, because at that time, 5,000 years ago, the Abrahamic folks were like still doing tribal, gangsta shit with each other, and I mean, Egypt had its thing going on, but other than that, you really had, and you had some, but so the Mahabharata, these two sides of the family were at war, and Arjuna, who was the head warrior on essentially the righteous side of the family that had gotten cheated out of a bunch of stuff. He has his best friend Krishna, who happens to be God, who's acting as his charioteer, and he says, I don't want to fight. Why should I fight in this war? And Krishna says, well, you should fight in this war because I'm asking you to fight in this war because there's a deeper purpose behind it. And he basically goes into this conversation with him that takes in the midst of the battlefield between the two forces that takes place. It takes about an hour and a half in real time, but it's 700 verses, and it's the essence of human spirituality, basically. And Arjuna essentially at first he throws down his bow and he says, I'm not going to fight. He says, I won't fight. Well, ultimately, by the end of the conversation, in which he basically learns that he should trust in Krishna, right? In God, in the divine. And ultimately, that trust is his vehicle, is his true chariot through which he will achieve victory, enlightenment, etc., etc. And it's not the goal that's important, but the action, the effort through the intention of devotion and trust. That's the important thing. And so here we have the idea in Vedic understanding is that the chariot, so these horses are the senses, right? And the senses must be reined in. The reins are the mind, and the one of the charioteers is the intelligence, and the other would be the soul. And the idea is that if the mind is reined in by the intelligence, then you can accomplish victory, etc., etc. If not, the horses just go every which way, and the mind is not tamed, right? So the idea is that the mind can be one's worst enemy or one's best friend. But the idea is that in order to do that, in order to rein in the mind, or rein in the senses and rein in the mind, one has to have a discriminating intelligence, because what the intelligence does is it essentially gives the mind a lot. Well, as we know, it gives the mind a lot to think about. And the mind is basically a door. The mind says yes or no. The mind says, okay, we're going to accept this or reject this. We're going to accept this idea, we're going to reject this idea. And that's what the mind does, is it accepts and rejects. The intelligence discriminates. It determines what we're going to accept and what we're going to reject, or the criteria by which we're going to accept or reject something. And so anyway, I had to put that in there because that's, you can't, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
a chariot, this is where, this chariot image is like 5,000 years old. So, and interestingly, the flag on there is the flag of, you can't really see it here, but it's the flag of Hanuman. And there's a legend that says anybody who, and the reason that Arjuna had on his chariot the flag of Hanuman is that anyone who has the flag of Hanuman on with them at all, right, they're not supposed to be able to be defeated. Well, and Barack Obama had an Indian roommate in college who told him, anybody that has the flag of Hanuman can't be defeated. So he carried a Hanuman in his pocket. He probably still does.
Who did? Obama?
Obama. Yeah, he carried Hanuman.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So, my favorite Obama story,
Awesome. Thank you
Michelle,
for sharing that.
Michelle was, was some like romantic scene in Chicago or something. And Obama was like staring off into, Barack was staring off into space. Like, what are you thinking about? He said, I'm just thinking about income inequality.
About what?
Income inequality.
Inequality.
All I'm hearing is garbly stuff. I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening on my end, you guys. What did you say?
I said income inequality.
Income inequality.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
X this out.
I love,
That's like a little known fact.
yeah.
Let me try to X this out if I can. I'm having issues.
Is that the end?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to get back to my Zoom so I can.
So what you were saying earlier makes a little more sense to me now about the whole senses and mind and whatever.
So what was it you wanted to show, CJ?
Did you want me to show the Destiny one since we didn't get that one in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then for Denise and I'll do so here's the Destiny card. This is from the Dreams of Gaia Tarot. And since it's such a different tarot, we are assuming that this is the Chariot card because it talks about, I'm trying to get that glare off there.
It looks
good.
Yeah.
It talks about overcoming trials and obstacles, your strengths and weaknesses, stepping inside, exploring your heart and mind, discovering your gifts and talents with a sense of purpose and confidence, leading a life with meaning and purpose. And this is just the quick little quippets. I can go over better in a post or something without reading the whole thing. Personal destiny, universal destiny, seeking answers, purpose, and quest. So that's that. And then for Denise and I, just because I know we like to use this deck a lot, I wanted to show.
Oh, that's great.
I love that card.
That is cool.
When I was creating the event for today's meeting, I was like, I wanted to make this card work so bad, but I wasn't able to get download anything that was small enough. And so
Oh,
every time I saved it, Facebook sort of rejected it. It was too large a file. But I was hoping to get that in there. That's so wonderful. But I love this kind of look on, the look on her face, I think is really classic, which is, which way do I go? You know, I could go either way and they're going to yield me this or that. So which one do I select? That's great. And there's the cat companion.
loving the cat companion.
Yeah.
Trying to see what else I've got here. So this is another one that a couple of us in this group have, the Dreaming Way.
Yes, I pulled that. I just put them all back, but I pulled that one.
So
Yeah.
interestingly, Denise, you know how you and I have been talking about the cards they were kind of like bland, for lack of a better word. This one, finally, I'm seeing life again.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've got that sort of, I guess, definitely more color. The color palette's expanded.
And I guess you see the movement and
Movement and all of that, yeah. It's
So
got much
then-
more density than a lot of the other images, like, you know,
yeah, and you've got all that, all of the depth of everything.
Yes.
It's not just one thing.
Mhm.
So then I want to throw a little fun into our video here. And I'm sorry, that one card is not Phantasmagoria. That's just what the book is called. It's a vampire deck, and I can't remember the name of the vampire deck, but the book that goes with it is Phantasmagoria.
Okay.
But this is, I want to say, Phantasmagoric Theater or something or another, and it has fun stuff. So
Oh. What do you,
little seahorses pulling a UFO. And I thought that was kind of cool. And then this one is that Dreaming Mystical Dreamers deck.
Oh yeah.
cool, yeah.
And then these two I need to post in the group and get some help with. I mean, I don't really need help with the Neon Moon, but definitely the Crow Tarot. So I'm going to put these together because they're both very different
Yeah.
from what we've studied, except that this on here, so he's on a bus
Mhm.
or a subway or whatever. I guess not a subway because you can see the water,
Yeah.
but he almost looks like he's on a bridge or something. And but he's like, I thought it was weird that it's more like public transportation, but this is that cyberpunk deck.
Mhm.
But if you look on his tie, he's got like the 4 elements. He's got the wings and everything on the front of the thing, and he's got the starry canopy up here.
Mhm.
But I'm looking at his face, and he looks exhausted and wrung out, and to me, I don't know. And then this one, I was telling Kurt, I don't really get, like, Kurt, you got to throw your intelligence in on this one.
I mean, you definitely see the light and the dark. You see, say, like the earth element from the Empress versus the moon element from the High Priestess. Yeah.
It's from the Crow deck?
Yes, the Crow Tarot.
Crow Tarot.
And I did not pull the book on that one or read anything on that one. And that's about it.
I just pulled that up to look at it a little bit closer. Oh, I'd have to spend some time with that one. The Crow
Yeah.
Tarot. Yeah, because there's a lot going on in there.
But it's so different from what we see as the Chariot.
Yeah.
So that's all I got, guys.
So what'd you guys talk about before I logged on? You guys just talking Chariot the whole time?
Yeah, pretty much. We
Yeah.
just started them on the gallery because You were not there to give the introduction to everything, and so
I'm sorry.
fine. That's fine.
You can, hey, stop the recording and then we can go ahead and sort of maybe catch up a little on the back end if you've got time.
All right, let's here, let me figure out how to stop. I should have this down by now because I do it all the time. We are now stopping recording. Good night.
Oh, interesting. So did y'all look